avocados, but we say we are big avocado farmers here. Timmy, my brother, takes care of them. He has 100 trees. So that's what he is part of his job, is to maintain those. It's mostly Hass is what we have planted, because that is the commercial variety in California. And we also have an assortment of other things scattered in, but the primary variety we have there is Hass. We also carry right now about 20 varieties of avocados in nursery for you guys to take home if you decide to buy one today. They assure me they stocked up the avocado section, so you can take a look at that if you're so inspired after the talk. So let's jump into avocados. Avocados are a subtropical tree. They're native to Central and South America. They're a rainforest tree. So they have this amazing genetic diversity. They've been farmed by the native peoples of the Americas for centuries, millennia probably. For the most part, they were farmed as large rainforest trees where you would go to the tree and that tree would support the area, support that tribe for a little while, and then you go to the next one because they have different varieties of fruit at different times of the year. Avocado trees can be as small as bushes or as bigger than a sycamore tree. So it kind of depends on the variety. Hass, as a reference, will get way bigger than the sycamore tree if you just let it go crazy and do whatever it wants. Many of the avocado varieties have that genetic potential to just turn into absolutely massive, beautiful trees. They're not the best farming trees in that way and the best way to make fruit consistently, but they can be absolutely beautiful trees. I keep saying Hass here. So Hass is like I said, is the primary avocado that's sold in the store. So when you buy fruit in the store, it is most likely going to be Hass. There's a few caveats to that, but the majority of it are going to be Hass. The Hass fruit, that variety was discovered in the 1920s in Los Angeles, in La Habra Heights, by a mail carrier. He was a avocado enthusiast, and he would take seeds and plant seeds and grow them and see what comes of it. We've all done that, or many of us, I imagine, have done that, where you take the seeds, you put the toothpicks in, you can put it on there, you do it with the kids, the grandkids, whatever it is. Right, and it grows roots, and then the tree grows. Well, that tree that grows out of that seed is not the same as the tree that seed came from, right? Just like you're not the same as your parents, the seed is different from the seed that it came from. So that seed grows, and it's a brand new variety. So you might have the next Hass. Most likely you will have a variety that doesn't fruit very well and doesn't taste very good, and is just another weird avocado variety. So so what we do, though, is we do this practice called grafting. So Mr. Hass, Rudolph Hass, had this variety that he grew from a seed. He hit the jackpot. It was a great variety. It had great oil content. It held on the tree for a long time. His kids liked it. Everything was good. So what you can do with avocados and many fruit trees is you take a stick like this. You take it and you can graft it to a rootstock. So what he did was he took this and he took it to Brokaw Nursery in Ventura, who was a large avocado producer at the time, and said, "Hey, I really like this tree. You should make some of them." And they said, "Okay, sure, why not? It sounds cool. It sounds like a nice tree." So they made some, and then over the next 30 years, it took over the entire avocado industry. Is now the global standard variety for avocados. So the global avocado industry really was born here in California, even though the tree isn't native here. So it's kind of a fun fact about avocados. Because of this, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of varieties. We've all probably seen the videos online of, look at this giant avocado, it's as big as a watermelon, look how cool this is. Or you go to Hawaii, like the biggest avocado ever in Hawaii, and there's this picture of a child, next to an avocado that's as big as a child. All true probably, and but there's a huge diversity in size. There's also a huge diversity in flavors, right? So just because it's a giant avocado doesn't mean it's a delicious avocado, but it might be a fun thing to have in the yard because then you'll give one to your friend, right? So there's all these reasons that we may want to grow avocados, and we're lucky here in California because avocados generally like to grow here on the California coast, and we'll talk about that, the reasons for that here in just a second. So that's kind of the history of avocados. Avocados for the U.S. Because I work in avocados, I love these facts. California produces about 350 million pounds of avocados a year, which sounds like a lot of avocados. The U.S. consumes 60 million pounds of avocados a week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we make a lot of avocados, but not nearly enough. So that's why the majority of the fruit you'll see in the grocery store comes from somewhere else, usually Mexico, or some of its more southerly neighbors. So it's a very popular fruit, and we love growing it here, but we can't quite produce enough to keep us all fed and make sure we have avocado on our next burger. So So bringing it into our backyard. So how do we have a successful avocado tree in our backyard that produces year in and year out, and we're happy with, and we even have a few to share with the neighbors if we like them. So that's going to be the goal of the talk today. The first thing is location, location, location. So avocados, because they are not native here, they don't like it here. You have to put a little effort in to keep them alive and thrive. Okay, so we have to grow our avocado trees in the right place. So they like it. It's not too hot, it's not too cold. That's why most of us live on the California coast, is because it's not too hot, it's not too cold. Right? But if you get a little too far inland, it gets a little hot and it gets a little cold. So Fillmore is a little hot and it gets a little cold. We're kind of on the edge here. Fillmore, Piru is where it is. They don't really like it when it has sustained temperatures over 100, 105. And they don't like it when the temperature drops below 35, and they really don't like it when the temperature drops below freezing. And you start having some damage and it can cause issues. So if you live in an area like Santa Clarita, where it gets pretty cold sometimes, it gets really hot every year, you're going to have to be a little more selective on what avocado varieties you choose. Some varieties are a little bit more frost tolerant, a little more heat tolerant, but there's still kind of some hard limits there. If it gets below 30, you're going to have some damage on your trees. If it gets below 100 or gets above 110, you're going to have some damage on your trees. So that's just something you're going to have to take into account what it is. But if you live in Ventura, if you live in Huntington Beach, if you live in Pasadena, if you live in Oceanside, you can grow pretty much any avocado tree, and you know that. You can plant anything in the ground in those areas. They just would like to grow. Avocados love it there. They also are trees. They need sunlight, right? We always like to pack as many things into our yard as possible, at least I do. And we need to remember we are growing a tree. The tree needs space to grow. It needs to have space to get to stretch out a little bit, and needs to have sunlight. We can't plant it on the shady side of our house and only gets 3 hours of sun every day. It's just not going to do it. It's not going to thrive. Those plants grow. Part of what plants need to grow is sunlight, right? They have those little leaves out there. Those are all little solar panels. So you need to have enough sunlight so the tree gets the energy it needs so that it can grow. Wind protection. So avocado trees are fairly susceptible to wind, and it can really beat them up. So we want to make sure it's in a if you are in a windy location, that it isn't getting fully blasted by the wind. If it is, then it has a high potential that it's going to the branches are going to rub, the leaves are going to tatter and blow off the tree. So that can be a very big challenge. Simi Valley is notorious for this. Well, I planted this tree, it just never does well. Well, the 80-mile-an-hour wind we get 2 or 3 times a year in Simi Valley really messes avocado trees up. So something to keep in mind. Normal wind, normal afternoon sundown or something like that, that's not a big deal. It's that consistent blasting wind can really mess up avocado trees. It'll also knock the fruit off. Spacing. So like I said before, avocados get different sizes. Some trees are more upright, some trees are more sprawling. We need to take that into account when we're deciding where to put it, or adjust the tree's size with pruning as we go forward. And try to choose a spot that you're not going to get super frustrated because it's always in the walkway. Always, we planted it 3 feet from the walkway because it was a cute little tree, and now it's just always in the walk. So just pick a spot, realizing that we buy a little tree and little trees turn into big trees. I see that a lot of time. I did it myself. Plant the apricot tree 5 feet from the pathway because a little tree looks like 5 feet's enough. 5 feet's not enough. It's always in the walkway. So just always remind yourself, okay, if I bought this little tree and that looks pretty close, looks pretty far, but it's going to be a tree, right? So we need to choose appropriately. Some of the avocado varieties, like Gem is one that we have, it does stay smaller, but smaller means if you don't do anything, it's going to max out at 15 feet. It's still not a little plant, right? It's just not going to be a 60-foot gigantic shade tree, okay? So make sure you check your spacing. The next thing is you need to make sure that your soil is well drained. Avocados do not like sitting in wet dirt. Avocados are a really weird tree. We've already talked about why they're a cool tree. They're also a weird tree. They're a really primitive plant in the evolutionarily perspective. They're a really primitive plant. Their roots don't have root hairs, so that's a structure that most plants, like this sycamore tree or this plum tree, have, where off the roots they have these little tiny microscopic fibers that go out into the soil, and that's how the trees extract nutrients out of the soil and increase that root surface area so they can pull in nutrients from water. Avocados don't have that. What they have is they have a fibrous root system, and they rely on the soil biology and the fungal communities to do that process for them and bring them the nutrients. So they actively cultivate a mulch layer underneath them. We've seen this under avocado trees, right? They drop a lot of leaves, and in their natural environment, that composts and that builds soil organic matter, and that helps with nutrient uptake for the avocado tree. So it's very important for the avocado tree that it doesn't have really wet soils, because the roots do not thrive in that. They want well-drained soils. And we want to make sure we also cultivate that mulch layer, because they really like to have that active root system high in the soil, and we need to keep that moist for them. We'll talk more about that when we talk about watering here in a minute. Soil pH. So avocados can have challenges if you have a lot of what's called free lime in your soil, which is common in some of the hillsides here around California. It means that you have bicarbonate, similar to baking soda, just naturally occurring in your soils. Avocados don't like that. So if your soil pH is very high, that can cause issues where your trees can turn yellow and they just don't thrive. And they stay ugly and then they eventually die. You can solve this by using soil sulfur or some other tools. It's kind of a niche problem, but I wanted to mention that. Some of these housing developments, if you're in one of the new housing developments, you can have compaction issues, and then you can also have lime issues. Both of those can show up. It's also, if that's where the guys washed out the concrete when they built the pad for your house, also changes the soil pH, and that can mess things up. So there's a lot of different ways that these can, odd things going on in your soil that you don't see until you plant a sensitive crop like avocados, and they can do that. So one of the solutions to that, amend your soil as well when you're planting, which we'll talk about here in a minute. Raised beds. If everything I just listed on the soil, like, yep, I got heavy clay at my house. Yep, I probably have high pH. All these things, yep, I probably should be growing avocados at my house. The only place I have is that's sunny is like on top is my patio in the backyard, and then it goes to a wall. Avocados, some of the avocados do pretty well in pots. Gems, for example, is a variety, like I said, it's a dwarf variety before. Get a large pot, little, that big or a little bit bigger. It's still a tree, right? So we need a big pot, but they'll do okay in a raised bed. So you can do a raised bed type thing, and they'll work. But you need to be selective, and you need to be aggressive with your pruning to keep everything in size. But you can do it. Anything can be done, right? It's your garden. You do what you need to do. Okay. Planting it. So we talked about they have these sensitive root systems. So when you take this home, we've probably all seen that talk where you pull the plant out. If there's any roots on there, you mess up the roots like this. You have your plum tree, you kind of shake them around, get the roots all loosened up, and put them in the hole. Don't do that with avocados. Avocado roots, you go like this with the avocados, all the roots break because they're this fibrous, very delicate root system. So we take the pot off, and we gently set it in the hole, and then we backfill into it. We dig a big hole so that we can amend that soil with an appropriate amount of planting mix, such as like this Harvest Supreme is a great planting mix that you can use to amend the soil. We want to also dig it extra deep so we have good drainage. You have poor drainage in your area. Some people plant on top of they'll backfill like 6-7 inches of sand underneath the tree so you get extra drainage under there, or put gravel down there if you're really concerned. Dig a really big hole and put like a drain system under it. You can get real wild, right? So, but just think about, we're trying to make a well-drained soil that has happy, high organic matter conditions around it. Okay, so we plant that tree. We're real gentle. We gently pack the soil back in around the tree. We're going to plant the tree a little bit high in the hole. Many of us here, you come to Otto Nursery. I hope you bought a few roses when you've been here. We have a few to choose from. When you plant roses, they're much more forgiving. You can throw them in the hole. You probably just poke a couple holes in the pot, put the whole thing in the hole. They'll grow. They'll be happy. You can also plant roses deep, and we recommend that sometimes, especially in cooler areas and things that you can plant deep. Avocados, you want to do the exact opposite. You want to plant them a little high. We're doing that so that the water doesn't pool around the trunk and cause root rot issues and have it too wet. So we're planting a little high. Even if the top of the soil is sticking out of your hole by a little bit, that's fine. You can fill it back in with mulch later anyways. Also, when you're preparing your area, we need to prepare to remember that we want to have mulch on the soil surface. So we want to make sure we have plenty of space. If it's next to a sidewalk or something, that you're not always trying to kick the mulch back up into your planter bed, right? We want to dig it down a little bit if we need to, so we have room to mend the top with a nice thick layer of mulch. So we plant the tree, and then we mulch around the tree, and that's going to help with that soil moisture. Irrigating, watering. Oh, I forgot my soil moisture probe. Abby, could you run over to the garden shop and grab a soil moisture probe if we've got one? Thank you. I want to show everybody that. So irrigating avocados, once again, they don't like it too wet. They don't like it too dry. So we've got to be a little careful and make sure that we don't over irrigate, and we also don't wait too long. Abby's going to grab a soil moisture probe that I can show you here in a second. If we've got some over there, it's a nice little device. I'll talk about it here in a minute. Maybe we'll come back to irrigating. But the reason that irrigating is important is we need to keep that soil moisture in that root zone in that root zone happy. If you have a young tree, it's incredibly important. If you have a mature established tree in your yard, they're much more durable. Okay, so most avocado trees like to get water at least once a week, at the longest once every 2 weeks. We're going to do that with generally with a sprinkler system so that we have even wetting pattern around the entire tree. If you have a drip system, we want to have lots of drippers spread around the entire tree. So if you're doing a drip system, totally fine. Avocados can be very successful with a drip system, but we need to make sure we spread a lot of drippers out. We don't want just like 1 or 2 drippers next to the tree. We want, maybe a couple rows of drippers across where that root zone is going to develop, and that's going to allow the roots to come out and really have maximum root to soil contact. This is the soil moisture meter. I'm ready to blue this time. Green ones before. Very simple device. You put it in. It's hard to see, but up here it says dry, moist, wet. We irrigate. We want to get in the wet zone. We never really want to get in the dry zone. We want to be on the bottom side of moist, and then we go turn our sprinklers back on again. It's nice. This is a 12-inch model, so you can kind of shove it down and see how deep it goes. It's also great for potted plants. I always have a terrible time irrigating potted plants on my porch. It's just a nice way to come in and you just poke it in, like, oh yeah, it's time to water. We'll go get them all again. So it can be a nice way. And then when we're establishing a tree, we need to remember that the roots take a while to get out into the soil. So really, we're trying to just irrigate around that pot where the pot used to be, right where that root ball is. So this is really nice because you can poke it into the root ball area and see how wet or dry it is in that area. If we wait for the soil around the root ball to dry, generally the root ball will over dry and that will really damage our tree and hurt our root system. Let me say that one more time. The roots of the tree, when you get them, are all in the pot. You stick the roots in the ground. The roots are still in the same shape as the pot. And it's going to take them several weeks to months to actually get out there into the soil and start pulling water out of the soil. So what we do is when we water, we're going to water that area that used to be in a pot, right? Think of it like we're just watering a pot that's in the ground, right? So watering that hole right there, we want to make sure you have good water penetration in that area. It's likely that the soil around that will stay fairly moist to wet all the way around it, but that center area around the tree is going to dry out faster than everything else because there's roots there and not in the soil yet. Over time, that will change and then everything works out. I see it a lot of times. One of the big issues that people have is they go on one of the extremes there. They water every day right on the tree, right next to the tree trunk, and they rot the tree out because they have poor drainage and it doesn't leave the root system. Or they check the soil moisture in the dirt around the tree, in the soil around the tree, and there's plenty of moisture there, but the actual where the roots are is bone dry because the roots are actively pulling water out of that. So early in the avocado planting, it can be very challenging. This is really helpful. So poke it in the right spot and it'll give you the right information. So that's watering for avocado trees, mulching, watering schedule. A mature avocado tree in ideal situations really actually like to get watered about twice a week. Okay. So twice a week, we want to make sure we get a nice wetting event, and that keeps the soil just nice and evenly moist. That's assuming you have a well-drained soil and your water application rates are appropriate. You don't want to have puddling around it and things like that. But water here twice a week throughout the summer. When it gets into winter, when it cools down, they're not using water as fast. Maybe it's not twice a week, maybe it's once a week, maybe it's one every 10 days. But that can be adjusted. Once again, our little soil moisture meter here can be really helpful in that decision.